Welcome, hockey fans, to another edition of This Week in Wisconsin Prep Hockey. I will be your substitute host tonight. MJ Hammett is out on assignment. With me today is Bill Berg Jr. and Del Scanlon. First on our agenda tonight is we have some coaches who have hit some milestones in this strange abbreviated season. Bill, why don't you tell us about them?
Sure, and this may not be an exhaustive list. These are just the ones I've seen this season. Dan Gilkerson, just a week or two ago, hit number 200 at Somerset. Neil Matson at Reedsburg, Wisconsin Dells. This one was very early in the season. Dell called it out right away, way back in December. 300 wins. Jason Kalen at Superior, already in terms of wins, the winningest coach at Superior. 300 wins, and Scott Parker, who celebrated his 30th season at Chippewa Falls last year, hit the 400 win milestone just last week or the week before. So Dan Gilkerson, Neil Matson, Jason Kalen, and Scott Parker hitting the big round numbers. If there's any other coaches out there that hit big round numbers, let us know, and we'll call them out too.
Congratulations. These are guys who are dedicated to coaching high school hockey in Wisconsin.
30 years
livelihood.
30 years at Chippewa Falls, and I believe this season was the first year that Chippewa Falls beat Superior in Superior. I think it was last year or the year before that was like the first time they beat Superior at all, and this year was the first time they beat Superior in Superior.
Alrighty. Well, that was coaches. Now let's move on to players. Dell is going to tell us about our Wyndham Garden Inn of Madison and Fitchburg, our players of the week.
And this week, our players on the boys' side comes from the southeast part of the state. On Wednesday, he had 1 goal, 1 assist, and a 4-3 overtime win over Marquette. The game-tying goal with 29 seconds left on the clock. On Thursday, he had 1 goal, 1 assist, and a 4-0 win over Arrowhead. On Saturday, he had 2 goals and a 5-1 win over Hudson, including the game-winning goal. Our Wyndham Garden Madison Fitchburg Player of the Week on the boys' side is from University School of Milwaukee, Peter Ells. Also nominated on the boys' side was Mason Manglitz from Onalaska. On the girls' side, we're going to go up to the northwestern part of the state. And on Monday, she had a 3 goals, 1 assist, and a 6-2 win over Hayward. On Tuesday, she had 2 goals and a 2-1 overtime victory against the Eau Claire area Stars. And Thursday, she was held scoreless, but her team went on to a 1-0 win over the Western Wisconsin Stars. The Fusion skated that evening with 12 skaters. And the winner is from St. Croix Valley Fusion, Kendall Sunby. Also nominated this week was Alyssa Knopf from Rock County Fury and Sydney Polzing from the Chippewa Falls Menominee. And those are our Wyndham Garden Madison Fitchburg Players of the Week.
And I didn't write it down on the notes, but Michaela Zilish of Fox City Stars was also nominated, but she had already won once, and we don't allow repeat winners, so she didn't go into the voting.
Alrighty. And that gets us to our main topic of the evening, playoffs.
Playoffs?
We'll be lucky if we win another game. But playoffs start on Tuesday for the boys, and on Thursday for the girls. On our site, we have switched the default season for the boys. If you go to the site now, you're going to see playoffs. If you want to see regular season stuff, you'll have to use the little thingy over on the top right to switch to regular season. The girls, there are still some girls games, regular season games scheduled for Tuesday. So after that, we will switch that one to playoffs also. So for our roundups tonight, we are going to do things in the order that they do the finals from the state tournament on Friday, which will be boys D2 first, then the girls, and then the boys Division 1. So starting in Section 1, up in the northwest corner, Division 2. What do we got going there, Bill?
Well, Superior is the real wild card here because they've played the fewest games starting their season in January. They got in as many games as they could. They're the real wild card here. They have not played Rice Lake yet. Rice Lake has beaten Hayward, Amory, and New Richmond already this year. And I said this last year about Rice Lake. I'm going to say it again. And as long as they're in Division 2, which is going to be the foreseeable future because I believe they're the smallest school in the Big Rivers Conference, nobody in Division 2 is going to throw something at Rice Lake that they haven't seen before. They play in the Big Rivers Conference. They played Hudson twice. They played Memorial twice. They played North twice. As far as Division 2 programs go, their conference schedule gives them one of the hardest schedules in the state, and it's going to be that way every year. Springs over in their section, they also play an incredibly hard schedule, but that's because they choose to when they go outside of the Badgerland Conference. Rice Lake, they have a built-in brutal schedule every year. So nobody in D2 is going to throw anything at them that they haven't seen before. I think, though, the dark horse wild card in this section is probably Hayward. That Abrick kid, not to be confused with their previous Abrick kid in net, is a phenomenal goalie. He seems to be following in his brother's footsteps. His brother was runner-up for our goalie award his senior season. He's having a great season over there at Hayward. They're the real dark horse. He can and will steal games. So that's what I see in D2 Section 1. Rice Lake should be the presumptive favorite, as every number one seed should be, just because of the schedule that's been thrown at them and they've weathered. They're tested and ready to go. Superior is just a complete wild card, and your dark horse is Hayward.
Well,
Not
look
to
at the
discount
schedule.
Amory and New Richmond. And
Right. I mean, Hayward did beat Superior
yes.
in their one meeting this year. They've played a tough schedule. They played Eau Claire Memorial, New Richmond. I don't know. When you have a goalie like Abrick, he can win. He can steal games. Yeah,
He has a 941 save percentage. I mean, we're used to, anything above 9 is good, but 941 is absurd.
Yes, I mean, yeah. But for great goalies, I mean, like 95 is like your ultimate goal. You're letting in one shot out of 20, and he is almost there.
He's a sophomore.
When you think about it for a goalie, okay, this goalie's his save percentage is 950. This goalie's save percentage is 900. How much better is it 950? He's twice as good as the 900 goalie. Out of 20 shots, he lets in one. The other guy lets in two. He's twice as good. So 940 is good. And yeah, and in that regard, Superior did outshoot Hayward by a considerable margin in that game.
Yeah, and it's somewhat surprising. Jamin Durfee, the goalie for Superior, has actually had a really nice year for the most part as well. I think he's sitting at like 905, so the save percentage isn't there, but that's because there were just a couple games, especially early on. Their first game against Eau Claire North, Superior that was their first game against a team that had already played 10. They were not ready for that game, but after that, he's really settled down and had a nice season himself. But I'm still picking Rice Lake. And other news... Huh?
Did we talk about New Richmond at all?
No, but they are joining the Big Rivers Conference next year.
Ah,
So they're going to have a nice
trying to catch up to Rice Lake. You think? Rice Lake is in there playing all these teams. If we want to compete with Rice Lake, we're going to have to get in that conference too.
Well, they're joining in all sports too,
except football.
Except football, all sports except football. New Richmond will be in the Big Rivers next year. I guess what I was hearing after I posted that is they never wanted to be in the middle border in the first place. But they will be the second smallest school in the Big Rivers Conference. I believe Hudson is the largest.
And I've been around long enough to know when that happened. I forget what conference they were in before that, but somebody else joined hockey in that middle border conference, and they had to switch. They were in a different conferences before, and they were making state tournament appearances. And they really didn't, they had to switch to that conference. So apparently something's happened that they were able to get back out of it now. So
is that sort of like Penn State made a hockey team, so the Big Ten had to extract themselves from the WCHA?
Yes, it was one of those situations. We have enough schools. Conference bylaws says you have to do this. Okay. All right, Dell, any comments, or should we move on to girls?
We can go ahead and move on to the girls.
All right. In the girls, Section 1. We should say in the girls were affected more by the COVID and teams not playing. Each of the girls sections only has 6 teams this year. So each of the sections has 2 games on Thursday, and then semifinal games next Tuesday. So for Section 1, the Chippewa Falls Menominee Sabres play Hayward, and the Hudson Raiders play Superior to start things off. The winner of the Sabres-Canes game plays Western Wisconsin Stars. The winner of Hudson and Superior plays the St. Croix Valley Fusion. Eau Claire area Stars got moved out into the Madison because that section had the most missing teams. So what do you think, Del?
Well, this here is going to, when we've been doing the top 6s the past few weeks, what have we had? Four out of the 6 teams have come from basically up north around the Big Rivers Conference.
This is the section of death.
And this, honestly, I think this is going to come down to your number 1 and 2 seeds meeting off in the sectional. And if you look at what's happened recently, that should be a very close game. The most recent game between them was a 1-0 win by the Fusion over the Western Wisconsin Stars just the other day. So it's going to be a tough fought sectional. Chippewa Falls Menominee, I can see them moving on to being the 4 seed and moving up to play the 1 seed. The Hudson Raiders moving up to play the 2, and Hudson could surprise the Fusion and move on. But like you said, this has been the section of death for how many years now up in Sectional 1.
And Hudson has already beaten the Fusion this season. That's why the top 6 for the girls has been so difficult, is all the teams in this section have been just beating each other in a weird round robin.
It makes it hard to pick. They beat them. Well, no, but they beat them earlier. Well, but they beat them earlier too.
Yeah, in their one meeting, the Western Wisconsin Stars spanked Hudson. The Fusion have beaten the Western Wisconsin Stars twice against 1 loss. Hudson beat the Fusion. Chippewa Falls Menominee, I believe they have
split with the Fusion.
Yeah, they split with the Fusion. So, in their game against Western Wisconsin was an overtime loss. So, I mean, I mean, Dell thinks it's going to come down to the one or two. Honestly, 1, 2, 3, 4 have a real good shot at this one. Hayward doesn't have the team this year that they've had in the past. Superior is still up there fighting the good fight, but they just haven't had that much success lately either, despite the fact that they have 2 women playing for the UW Eau Claire women's team now, which was, we were talking with Coach Strand, like that was fairly unexpected. Superior hasn't had a lot of success in recent years, but they still managed to put 2 girls into college hockey, and that's just at that one school.
What that means is they have good players, just not a lot of depth.
So yeah, this could go any number of ways. I'm gonna pick the Fusion because I'm gonna make picks. I don't know if you guys are, but I am.
Well, if we're making picks, then if I went back to D2 boys, I actually will go with Superior to take that one. Still Burglar's thunder before he takes them.
I don't know. He felt awfully dirty today when he voted for Rhinelander higher than Superior on his top 6s.
That still doesn't feel right. No.
I mean, you only lived in Anago for 37 years.
And yes, I lived in Anago for 37 years, but I really didn't. I worked in Rhinelander for 6 years, and that's when I got to know that. Never mind.
What a Hodag was? And I will actually go with the Fusion too on the girls.
I'm going to go with the Western Wisconsin Stars.
And we take it that
the Stars are going to align.
Oh. And we take it that you went with the Superior in D2 boys.
The Columbia Blue and White, yes.
Okay.
All right. Boys, Division 1. Top-rated Hudson. Second-rated Chippewa Falls. Third-rated Spash. Fourth-rated Eau Claire North, followed by Eau Claire Memorial. The big question, is Bridger Fixmer back?
I don't think so. Let me check if he played.
He did not in the last game.
Then no. Yeah, like, I mean, Chippewa Falls is a very good hockey team without Bridger Fixmer, and they're a great team with him. That's not a knock on their other goalies. I mean, there's nothing wrong with there's a difference between a good goalie and a great goalie, and he's a great goalie. And he played 3 games this season. So, I think you saw some losses and ties on their record that, maybe they didn't have last year because they had, he is a Team Wisconsin goalie. I don't know if I didn't look at Team Wisconsin this year, so I don't know if he was on the U18s this year, but he was a U16 Team Wisconsin goalie previously. So they're, they go from being a great team to a very good team. Hudson, I would have told you a week ago, was invincible, but they lost to Edgewood and they lost to USM, so apparently their bugaboo is private schools.
There are none of those in their section.
No.
That's a good thing.
But if you look past the scoreboard, they vastly outshot both those teams in those games. The loss to Edgewood and the loss to USM, it just, either bad breaks or, they were so focused on offense, they let a couple weird plays slip through it. And I mean, USM scored 5 goals on 18 shots in that game where USM beat Hudson. That's not something you're going to expect to see that often. But, down ballot, you got Memorial and North, with North being the higher seed. Spash at 3. Spash keeps getting top 6 votes. They keep not making the top 6, but they keep getting votes. Wausau West just doesn't seem to have it right now. Not in the way they did in the past. So I think, a week ago I'd have told you that Hudson was, even though this is just, this is the boys section of death, I'd have told you that Hudson was almost a lock. But as it is now, I don't think that's true. I think they've shown that they can be gotten to, and that's not nothing. That said, I'm still picking them.
Yeah, like you're saying, little surprised, with the 2 losses that they had picked up, against USM, a 5-1 game, and then the 4-1 to Edgewood. Like we said last week, felt a little sorry for River Falls on Monday having to pick up play Hudson after they had just lost that game to Edgewood. And then in between there, was it Matamidi? They played
Matamidi.
A 4-2 loss to them, but a 5-4 win over the Old Abes, and then they had 3 games in a row that they didn't give up a goal and stuff. But so it's kind of hard to pick against Hudson going through this sectional.
It is. I'm looking at each of the other teams and trying to make a case for each of them, and I can't convince myself that any of the other teams there present a serious threat.
I mean, Hudson's already beat them all twice. The first one against Chippewa Falls was overtime, 4-3. Bridger Fixmer did play in that game. The next time they played Chippewa Falls, it was 6-0. The first time they played Eau Claire Memorial, it was 6-0. The second time, the Old Abes narrowed it to 5-4. The first time they played North, it was 5-0. The second time, it was 9-2. Their game with Wausau West got canceled as part of West's shutdown back in December. Their early game against University School got moved, obviously, to the end of the year. They beat Notre Dame 6-1 back in December. Notre Dame was the number 1 team in the state at that time, and then after that win, Hudson carried it all the way through until just now when they lost. It's hard. It'd be hard to pick against them right now. The head-to-head matchups they've shown against all those other teams, it'd be hard to pick somebody else. But it was hard to pick somebody else last year too, and Chippewa Falls is the one that went to the state tournament.
With Bridger Fixmer.
Yes.
All right. Moving on. Back to Division 2. Moving on to Section 2, starting with Division 2.
Great Northern Conference Tournament 2.0.
Yes. The only difference between the Great Northern Conference and the section is we are swapping out Marshfield for Medford. Marshfield, who is 6th in the seeding, and Medford, I think, who was 8th in the seeding for the GNC.
No, Tomahawk would have still been 8th.
The seeds are Pines number 1, Mosinee number 2, Lakeland number 3, Rhinelander number 4, and Rhinelander, the Odags, just won the Great Northern Conference Tournament.
Beating Northland Pines and Mosinee.
Beating Northland Pines in the semifinals and Mosinee in the finals. We don't know the score of that game because neither team has entered it yet. But I did find out that Rhinelander did indeed win the Great Northern Conference Tournament. So does that make them the front runner for this section, since it's basically 7 out of the 8 same teams?
I think they have to be. Their win earlier this season against Pines was the first time they have beaten Pines in 29 years, and then they came back and did it again.
And I spent the hour before this before we started this podcast, I spent an hour trying to build up a case as why Rhinelander won't beat Pines, and why Rhinelander won't represent this section. And the best I could do is that sorry old it's hard to beat a team 3 times in 1 year, and that really doesn't work.
I still think there's a good case to be made for both Lakeland and Pines. Pines is harder because Rhinelander has now beat them twice, 5-2. But
Are we just discounting Mosinee?
I'm getting there. They're in this as well.
Okay.
Those 4 teams are all involved. Coming into the Great Northern Conference tournament where they all played 3 games, Lakeland had only played 10 games. Pines had played 11. Rhinelander had played 14 and Mosinee had played 15. And I think that matters. I think that the more games you have under your belt when that kind of thing happens matters. And now that they have those 3 games under their belt, I think Mosinee is better equipped to deal with them, or not Mosinee. Lakeland is better equipped to deal with them in the future. I think Max Toijala on Lakeland is the best player in the section. I'm sure that Riley McGee, the defenseman for Pines, has something to say about that, and some of their other players. But I think he's the best player in the section, and I think in D2, I think that can carry you more than it can in D1, kind of like we see on the girls' side, where a team just has like that one superfluous player who can win games by herself. I think that Lakeland can kind of do that. Also, Jake Suter is their coach. Gary is an assistant, so that's a thing.
Now, the thing is when I look at this, and like you guys said, this is the Great Northern Conference Tournament 2.0, basically. But one of the questions that you end up with is, you've got your coaches all saying, okay, everybody's 0-0 here, going in, and the records are out the window because now it's winner to go home. But if you're Northland Pines and let's say that Northland Pines and Rhinelander both win their first round games and they meet up in the regional finals, which is bracket following through. Now, if you're Northland Pines and you're taking the ice, how much is that in your head going in there, knowing that you've lost to them twice already this year?
I think that losing to Rhinelander twice, and we're making assumptions that Pines is going to beat Tomahawk. Tomahawk hasn't won a game this year, and Rhinelander is going to beat Wapaka. But I think that is in their heads. But on the other hand, Pines was the number 1 seed in the Great Northern Conference tournament, and they're the number 1 seed in the sectional, and they weren't supposed to be. We talked to Coach Cox last year, live on camera, talking about how many seniors they had, and
12. They lost 12 seniors.
They lost 12 seniors. They are not supposed to, in no way, shape, or form, when this season played out, were they supposed to be the number 1 seed of a section, and they are. So despite the fact that they lost to Rhinelander twice this year, first loss in 29 years, and they lost to them in the Great Northern Conference tournament, they have to be still, that has to matter. You've got to get a high from that. They're not supposed to be where they are, and they're there. They've got to get energy from that.
Well, I was trying to come up with, since Pines is the number 1 seed and Rhinelander is the number 4, that means they're going to meet in the semifinals of the section, which is at the highest seed, not in the sectional finals, which is going to be played at Mosinee. So, they're going to play them in the Dome. Well, apparently that's where Rhinelander won both of their games, was in the Dome. And we all know that is the greatest home field advantage in high school hockey in Wisconsin, is Northland Pines playing in their Dome. So I guess it just comes down to if any of the players on Northland Pines have older brothers. Older brothers who are saying, you cannot lose to Rhinelander in the sectional final, in the sectionals. You know how many times we lost to Rhinelander? We never lost to Rhinelander. if they have older brothers, they will, make them pay for this.
Well, I mean, it is Northland Pines, so they're guaranteed to have older brothers. There's a Mayette on the team this year. Michael, his brother, was one of the seniors last year. There's always a Brown. There's 2 Browns on the team this year. You see those names repeating again. Cooper Cox. I'm sure he knows all about not losing to Rhinelander. So I mean, yeah. I mentioned Riley McGee. Rowan, little brother, is on the team this year. Rhinelander, or not Rhinelander, Pines wasn't supposed to be where they are, and they're there, and I think that'll matter to them. But yeah, Rhinelander's already beat them twice, 5-2. All signs point to Rhinelander, if that matchup happens, it's winning it again. On the other end, Mosinee and Lakeland, 2 very good teams. Mosinee played the largest schedule of all the teams in this section. The most non-conference games. They went out. They went over to Ashwaubenon a couple times. They've been around, and these teams, they could also win it. Like I said, I think Max Toijala of Lakeland is probably the best player in the section. Caden, I think it is, Schmerler in Mosinee is piling on goals this year. This should be a fun one. Last year, Pines was a foregone conclusion, even though they needed overtime to beat Mosinee in the sectional final. Coming into the tournament, Pines was a foregone conclusion. It didn't quite play out that way, but this year, I think that anybody in the top 4 could reasonably win it, which is nice to see.
So who are you going to pick?
I am going to pick Mosinee. I just spent all that time talking about Lakeland. I'm picking Mosinee.
And with you talking all that time about Lakeland and Mosinee, I'm actually going to go back up and take the number 1 seed in this, the Northland Pines.
I was torn, and then looking at the sectional final is scheduled for Mosinee, which means they'll have home field advantage for the whole thing, and I'm going to have to take Mosinee as well. Okay, back to the girls, section 2, where the number 1 seed, the number 1 ranked team in the girls' side, the Fox City Stars, Central Wisconsin Storm, the number 2 seed, Northland Pine Eagles 3, Bay Area Ice Bears 4, Northern Edge 5, and the Medford Raiders 6. Quick question. Anybody in this section can beat Fox Cities?
The only blemish on their record this year was a 2-2 tie to Pines.
Really?
Yep, they beat, back-to-back just this week. They beat Bay Area and Central Wisconsin 5-1. And, this wasn't, we got outshot and our goalie saved us and we got some lucky breaks. They outshot one of them 34-22. And the other one, shots were just about even. So, they can put the puck in the net. That game against Pines, they did outshoot them by a lot, and they didn't find the net that day. But that's the only blemish on their record, is a 2-2 loss to Pines, or tie with Pines. But otherwise, talking about other sections, they've beaten the Fusion twice. They've beaten USM, who I believe is the number 1 seed in their section, twice. They've beaten Central Wisconsin. They've beaten Bay Area. I can't see any reason to pick somebody other than the Stars at this point. They're going wire to wire as the number 1 team in the state. They won the last 2 state tournaments. We've heard that, Michaela Zilish may be the best player in the state. I called her a senior a couple weeks ago. She is a junior. And then, besides her, she's got 68 points. Grace Rentmeester has 65. She's a freshman. That ain't right. We talked about all the players that graduated last year. They have a 65-point freshman.
That can make a coach breathe a little easier.
She goes to Wrightstown. I've never heard of Wrightstown.
Well, you have now. Well, and we always kind of you always kind of lean to your defending state champion. They're there until somebody beats them and takes over their spot. For being number one. And Fox Cities just kind of just showed they don't want to give it up, and I really would not be able to pick against them in this bracket.
The secret, not the secret, the key to beating them is those two players. Zilish has 44 goals. Rentmeester has 33. Nobody else in the team has more than 9. Next is 5. So, that's their offense. Is those two girls? That's their offense. If you can shut them down, like Pines seems to have done in that 2-2 tie, then they can be beaten just like anybody else. But you have to keep them out because that's 77 goals between two players.
Right, and looking at Northland Pines' schedule, I mean they're a 500 team. I mean they're not. It's not like they were building up to that. I'm not saying that was a fluke, but that game was played, up in Eagle River. I don't know if the girls always. Sometimes they play on what they call the cube. But, I mean, if it was in the dome, again, that home ice advantage goes to them just like it does to the boys. But, yeah, I really can't see. I don't know. I can't see picking against the number 1 seed on this side.
Nope. D1.
D1. Section 2. We have Notre Dame Academy at number 1, Bayport at number 2.
No.
Nina Hortonville Menasha at number 2, Bayport at number 3, Ashwaubenon De Pere 4, and Ashwaubenon 5. What else? Yeah, West Bend, Fond du Lac way down at 7. Beaver Dam Appleton. Anybody beat Notre Dame in this section?
Well, they haven't yet. So, I mean, there's that. Dell's gone. We'll wait for him to come back. They haven't beaten Notre Dame yet. Notre Dame has 3 losses on the season. Fond du Lac Springs, University School, and Hudson. 3 teams that have all been ranked number 1 in the state. Notre Dame has also been ranked number 1 in the state. They beat Bayport 4-1. They beat Ashwaubenon 5-3. They beat De Pere 7-0. One team that they beat Nina 5-1. That was way back at the start of the season. One team that I think is worth watching. I don't think they can win the section, but I think you could see West Bend, the Ice Bears. I think, if they get past number 11 Fox Cities, I think they could actually challenge Bayport in that second round game. Possibly even Nina if they make it to the third round. They're not a bad team. 14-6 on the season. Yeah, they're down in, a part of the state where the teams aren't always the strongest, but they've had a nice season. I don't think they have what it takes to win the section and beat Notre Dame, but I think they could be that team that knocks off a 3. Even a 2.
Welcome back, Dell. We can't hear you, though. I can see you, just can't hear you.
The teleportation had failed. Had to come back.
Anyway, we're discussing if anybody can beat Notre Dame in Section 1 for the boys.
I think this is one of those ones where to beat Notre Dame, you've got to play the perfect game, and all of us kind of hate picking number 1 seed all the way through, but This is one that I don't see the upset sitting there.
And it's yeah, like we're not picking the upsets. It's kind of, I'm disappointed in myself because um the Fox River Classic is a surprisingly good conference this year. Bayport, De Pere, Ashwaubenon, all in that conference with Notre Dame. The Fox River Classic Conference is better than the Wisconsin Valley Conference this year.
Better than
Probably
the Badgerland?
Springs, Neenah. Yeah, I think the Fox River Classic is better than the Badgerland Conference this year too. And I don't know that they've been in that position many times before. De Pere fielded a nice team. Ashwaubenon fielded a nice team. Bayport fielded a nice team. Bayport, they have the first team all conference goalie in the Fox River Classic this year, Marcus Niemi. You know, he's the kind of goalie that can steal games for you. If anybody's going to have a chance against Notre Dame, he's going to have to steal it because that team is stacked. And like I said, the 3 games they lost were all to teams ranked number 1. Hudson, USM, and Springs.
And this year, we've actually seen Ashwaubenon, where we've seen, their name come up, and have played some really nice games and everything. And
you don't want to go to overtime against them because Cole Alter will score the game winner. I've already posted it twice when I post those videos from Live Barn. I mean, that's just apparently that's how you win Conference Player of the Year. He and Brendan Poshak of Notre Dame shared that. I'll have it posted later tonight. But yeah.
And it gets kind of rough when you actually have those players like that, and they're in the conference that you've got Notre Dame and you got Fond du Lac Springs, and sometimes that player gets overlooked. And this year's been extremely hard for us since we're not really able to go to the games, even though you are able to see them on Live Barn. It's still nice to be able to go to the games and get some nice photos of the kids playing and stuff. But as we're sitting here talking, I personally think Notre Dame will make it out of this sectional.
Yeah. On to number 3.
Against them. Okay. Moving on then to section 3. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Division 2, section 3. Baldwin Woodville, number 1 seed. Somerset, 2. Menominee, 3. West Salem, 4. Ram, 5. Barf, 6. River Falls, 7. And Viroqua, 8.
This is the section that I know the least about. Like, it was that way last year too. Somebody is going to win. And there were some upsets last year. Last year, I believe Menominee was a lower seed, but they ended up going to the sectional final. And part of the reason for that is the same reason that Rice Lake won their section, is because they play Hudson twice, and Eau Claire Memorial twice, and Eau Claire North twice, and Chippewa Falls twice. So Menominee and River Falls have a leg up in that respect. They play in the toughest conference in the state. Baldwin Woodville has been all over the map this year. There have been times when they have been ranked, I don't know about on the final list, but in terms of the way coaches vote, they've been as high as 3rd on the top 6s, and then they have had weeks where they've gotten 0 votes. They're kind of inconsistent in that respect. So I have no idea.
On this one, I actually think I'm going to go with the number 2 seed in the sectional, Somerset, to come out of this one.
Any particular reason, or just because they did last year?
Honestly, I didn't know they did last year. I don't remember. You remember last year down at state, I was so ill that.
Oh, that's right. You were the walking. Yeah,
I was the walking dead last year.
Yeah,
and he was willing to share it with others.
Yeah, I brought it home with me.
Yeah, so did Bob. Yeah.
Somerset and Baldwin Woodville played a 2-1 BW win and a 2-2 tie
Yeah.
this season.
I was just looking at that. Yeah, Baldwin Woodville has put a nice season together, and Somerset has also, and they've each played pretty good schedules outside of their conference. I think it's gonna be a toss-up between the two of them. I don't see going down to, well, even Menominee, they play in that Big Rivers Conference too, but I don't think they win a whole lot of games in there.
Well, no, they're 8-16, but they're a 3 seed.
Let's see. I could use the argument. Okay, Baldwin Woodville won one, then they tied. So then it's Somerset's turn.
That's fair.
That's fair, but doesn't really factor in.
That's the way the dice came up.
Well, I suppose we have to talk about West Salem because of their coach.
Eric Borey?
Yeah.
I was going to ask him a question the other day, but then I forgot.
I still haven't gotten a chance to go see their new rink that they opened up a couple years back. They're no longer in the meat locker.
Maybe you know the answer to this, Burglar. How many seasons did Casey Nelson play at Wisconsin Rapids?
Oh, I don't know that.
Okay. I know he was on Rapids for the 2009-2010 season, but that's before we have stats for, so I don't remember if he was freshman, junior, sophomore, what. He's in the AHL now, and I'm trying to track down all these Wisconsin players playing after high school.
Oh, would Pat McDonald know?
He probably would too, but I didn't want to email the coaches yet. I tried to learn that stuff on my own before I go asking for help, and I haven't been able to figure it out. So, who you got?
Yeah, West Salem has not played a lot of games this year also. Who do I got?
Well, that's what's tough. Usually when we get to playoff time, you can expect most teams to have played at least 20 games, if not the full 24. But, now we're looking at anywhere from 8 to... There are teams that have 20 games in, so it's really hard.
I'm going to have to, just because, for whatever reason, oh, cripe. Jason Schulte, is that who it is? I post, I go do the around the state, go around the state, look for scores every Friday, and he always seems to have weekly summaries of Baldwin Woodville on Fridays, and so I've been reading about Baldwin Woodville all season long, and yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Baldwin Woodville.
Yeah, Jason's at the Baldwin Bulletin and the Amory Free Press.
Yes,
those two.
Does a good job of covering both of those teams.
Yep, I'm also going to go with the number 1 seed. Dell.
I'm going with the number 2 seed, Somerset.
Okay, then. Moving on to the girls, section 3. Number 1, moved down from Eau Claire area. Eau Claire area Stars are number 1. Wisconsin Valley Union, number 2. Neither of those teams was in that section at the start of the year. If you're on Alaska, Black River Falls, Viroqua, and the Badger Lightning, that's got to annoy you. None of the matches that Madison teams can play this year, so they find Spash Rapids Marshfield and Eau Claire Altoona to come down into your section, but that's the way the map works. So they're number 1 and 2, and then I've actually mentioned all 4 teams in the section. Eau Claire area is a top 6 team. They have been all year. They were scheduled for the section of death. I think it's hard to pick against them this year in that section. In the other section, it'd just be another thing to toss in the air for that ridiculous section. But down here, I think they're too much. The center of girls hockey in Wisconsin right now seems to be centered around the northwestern part of the state, and so I'm going with them. Have they played anybody else over here yet? They've beaten Black River Falls 6-2. They've beaten Onalaska 9-0. Those are the only games they played in this section. And Onalaska's the 3 seed. So.
And I don't think the Wisconsin Valley Union has the firepower to take them either.
No. And I think, the Stars are actually going to come out of this one and everything. We know Valley Union are the ones that would actually be the ones to challenge them. And Junior just said what the score was against Onalaska. So I see the Stars coming out of this sectional.
And if you were, do the whole conspiracy thing, who did Eau Claire pay to get moved to this section? To get out of section 1 and into section 3. But we won't go there.
Well, I mean, if you look at the map, Hudson is further west than Eau Claire. St. Croix Valley is further north. The western Wisconsin Stars are further north. Superior's further north. Hayward's further north.
Saying it's just geography?
It is just geography.
All right. Sticking with Division or Section 3, Division 1. Top seed, Madison Edgewood. Number 2, Verona. Number 3, Sauk Prairie. 4, Onalaska. 5, Waunakee. 6, RWD. 7, Thomas Sparta. 8, Baraboo, or Veritage or Portaboo, take your pick. 9, Sun Prairie. 10, the Avalanche. And 11, Middleton. And this is probably the section that was most affected by the COVID revamping. And like Verona played a club schedule up until just recently.
Well, and Onalaska Lacrosse, I believe Thomas Sparta and the Avalanche were all in Section 1 at the start of the season. And then they got moved into this one after Madison East La Follette, Madison Memorial, Madison West, all bowed out because of restrictions. So they got moved down and in. Obviously, top seed Edgewood knocked off Hudson. They beat Verona 2-0. They just beat Chippewa Falls 4-3. They beat Fondy Springs 7-2, which might be the most shocking score I've seen all season. And what's more impressive about that 7-2 win is that Edgewood did it with 13 shots. Bergler wrote about that game on the website. Outshot 35-13, but they won 7-2 because their goalie played very well, Zach Walker, and as Bergler pointed out and Coach Rothering said, their first line is fantastic, and that's. I don't think Edgewood is as deep as some of the other number 1 seeds. They're certainly not as deep as Hudson or Notre Dame, but that first line can easily skate with Hudson and Notre Dame, and the other ones just have to, play decent defense, and it puts them in a good position. The game against Verona was played in Sauk Prairie because neither of those teams gets home games, and shots were 24-22. So it's not like the Hudson game and the Springs game where those two teams vastly outshot Edgewood, but Edgewood managed to hold on for the win, and actually in both cases win convincingly. The Verona game 2-0. Edgewood didn't put as many pucks in the net, but shots were even. They had them the whole time. Waunakee actually got a vote this week. in the top 6. They're in the also receiving votes. Verona also got a vote this week. Sauk Prairie has been each of the last 2 seasons the team with the gaudy record that doesn't get any respect.
Yes, they have one loss this year.
One loss. Then last year they had the state's leading scorer, but they get no respect because they didn't really travel.
Top teams.
Yeah, they don't play any of the other. Yeah, they don't play any of the top teams, any of the ranked teams. They did. I mean, they did this year. They had Onalaska Lacrosse on the schedule. It's not their fault that Onalaska Lacrosse doesn't seem. Well, they didn't start playing until January. But Sauk Prairie outshot them 43-21. So Onalaska doesn't have the team that they've had in recent years. So yeah, Sauk Prairie, they're kind of a wild card.
It was very hard to build a schedule this year. I mean, most teams played. If their conference existed, which Sauk Prairie did not.
No, the Badger Conference did not exist.
Badger itself did not exist this year. So it's hard to schedule games, and when your program is building and you're starting to pile up wins, that's when you can start scheduling games against some of the other top clubs. They don't want to, if you're starting to schedule non-conference games, the top teams want to play other top teams. What they want to do is they want to play other top teams from different areas of the state, because each of the different areas has kind of a different style, in what's called in that, in how they play. So the top teams like to play other top teams from around the state. So once Sauk Prairie, this would be the kind of year where they'd start building up, then get some of those other, tougher non-conference games. But this year was not a normal year in any respect at all. So yeah, Sauk Prairie sitting there with one loss on the season, and that was, to Beaver Dam, and Beaver Dam's not a top 10 team either. So it's hard to say. They put together a nice season. We congratulate them on that. And I'm again, this is one where on Fridays when I look around and do my right, I find write-ups on Sauk Prairie, and I've kind of gotten to follow Sauk Prairie. So and I'll imagine Madison Edgewood is the by far the favorite coming out of here. Verona is just not only a dark horse, they're like an invisible horse. Nobody knows what the heck Verona has this year. I like Sauk Prairie.
I see Sauk Prairie and Edgewood in the sectional final, but I actually think it's going to be Edgewood coming out of here.
I would not have had any cause to pick against Verona in the lower half of the section. But then they did lose to Waunakee. Waunakee's a good team, but whoever scored the game on our website entered an extra 1 on the 11 shots that Verona took in the second period. It says 111. So our score sheet currently says that Verona outshot Waunakee 151-31 in that game.
A lot of shots.
It should probably be 51-31. But, that's... Yeah,
still 51's a lot of shots.
That'll help your save percentage when you stop 149 shots. But it is a lot of shots, but they also gave up 31. You don't often see that. When a team is taking 50 shots, they still give up 30. Usually when a team is taking 50-something shots, they're giving up in the teens, maybe the low 20s.
You don't see that when you're playing 3-on-3 or 4-on-4.
Yes.
That's when you see 50 and 30 shots.
But that said, I still think Verona is stronger. They still have a lot of those guys that won the state championship last year. A lot of the players on that team are still there. So they're very strong. In fact, I think I'm going to take Verona to win this section.
All right, I've got Sauk Prairie. Who do you have, Dell?
I have Edgewood.
Okay.
Dell's the smart one.
Yes, he is.
I'm just going with the Catholic school.
My grandmother would be proud.
All right.
You have to remember, I went to Holy Name for 2 years, and Edgewood and Holy Name were not friendly with each other.
All right. Heading into the home stretch now is Section 4. On the Division 2 side. Yeah. Okay. Final act, St. Mary Springs, number 1. Oregon, 2. Homestead, 3. Cedarburg, 4. Waupun, 5. McFarland, 6. Stoughton, 7. Yeah, actually, this section was missing a team to start with. Only had 7, and then Waupun actually had to bow out due to COVID. So Cedarburg is actually in the semifinals against Springs. So with the 6 teams there, Fun Like Springs is good.
Look at this.
Nobody challenged them last year in Division 2.
Yeah, look at just no offense to anybody, but the way Springs won the state tournament last year and then returned like everybody. I mean, come on, it's hard to justify picking against them. Like,
well, last year we talked Fond du Lac Springs and Northland Pines. Last year was the first year with the 2 divisions, and I don't know, but you guys, I actually thought that had there just been the old 8 sections and 1 division, that Fond du Lac Springs would have come out of their section and Northland Pines would have come out of theirs. I mean, I think those teams both would have played, in if there'd only been 1 tournament. And Fond du Lac Springs just handled Northland Pines down there at state, and Northland Pines had 12 seniors who are gone now, and Fond du Lac Springs got most of their team back. So they've just been beating up on everybody this year, regardless of what division they are. How many losses do they have?
2.
2?
They lost to University School back in December, 4-2, and then they avenged that loss with a 5-2 win on January 16th. And then they had that very surprising loss to Edgewood that you wrote about. As Coach Welch has mentioned in a couple times when just talking with him via email, they have a once-in-a-generation team right now. Next year, after they graduate a whole bunch of guys, probably a different story. They're probably, I believe what Coach Cox used to describe his team last year down at the state tournament is that next year we'll have a more traditional Division II team. I think next year Springs will have a more traditional Division II team. Maybe not. They've been good for several years now, but they're graduating a whole lot of guys, but I think it's impossible to pick against them.
Yeah.
The whole way through.
I think I've talked about this before, that a couple of years ago I was at the Badgerland Conference tournament. Done in it. They always have it in the finals or in Fond du Lac, and we were looking at the banners. The Fond du Lac Thunder youth hockey program, the banners they have, and they had state champions, Bantams and Peewees. This one group just kept winning state champions not every year, but like you'd follow them, from squirt to peewee to bantam, you'd follow this group winning state tournaments. And that's the guys who are seniors now. And, and apparently most of them go to Springs, not Goodrich. Is that the public school?
I think so.
Yeah. So most of them go to Springs. So these guys, yeah, these guys have been the best players, the best team in their age group for as long as they've been playing hockey. Yeah, it is a generational thing, and they're good. I really don't see anybody. Again, Oregon, I don't know. I don't know what kind of schedule they've played. I really don't see anybody here challenging them.
There's been a couple weeks when Oregon was ranked, but I don't know that it matters at the moment where you were ranked when you're facing that team. They're really good.
And yeah, well, yeah, and their goalie's a sophomore now. Last year he was a freshman, and so I think maybe he's just a little bit nervous. Well, now he's a sophomore, and he's not nervous anymore.
He might be after that 7-2 loss.
He did get pulled. He did get pulled in the third period after giving up his 5th goal on 9 shots. But let's just say that Edgewood is very efficient in that game.
They shot it where he wasn't.
Yeah.
Which is hard for teams to do sometimes. All right, I think we all made our picks on that one.
Yeah, I think we all kind of know where we're going with that one.
All right. Girls. What do we got? The University School Wildcats number 1. Warhawks number 2, Lakeshore Lightning number 3, Warhawks, Warbirds number 4, Glacier number 5, and the Golden Beavers of Beaver Dam number 6.
I have a request that many of the girls' co-ops rename themselves because we've got too many Lightnings and too many Stars. You have to have a new name. Everybody's got to have a unique name.
Well, sitting here looking at this one, it's kind of surprising when you end up looking at the schedule and what they're out of 17 games. It's kind of a quiet season for University School, but they're sitting there 14-3. I've taken they just played their conference tournament this weekend. Friday they had a 5-2 win over the Warhawks, and then a 2-1 overtime victory against the Ice Bears yesterday. So, their number 1 seed looks like it was well earned. Arrowhead sitting there and looks like they finished 12-5 on the season. Or no, they've only played 12 games and 5-7, but that might just be the division, their conference.
And then Arrowhead. Well, let's just talk about USM for a second. They've beaten Arrowhead 3 times. So, Bergler mentioned that old chestnut. It's hard to beat a team 3 times in one season when he was trying to find a justification for Pines beating Rhinelander. Even though we know that adage is not true. Once you've beaten a team twice, it's easier to beat them the 3rd time. USM has beaten Arrowhead 3 times already. They've beaten the Lakeshore Lightning 4 times already. How many times did they play the Warbirds, the 4 seed? 1, 2. They've beaten them twice already. The Glacier, did they play them? Brookfield, they beat Brookfield. Once. It looks like the other 2 games were canceled. So they've beaten everybody. The Glacier, they only beat them once. They've beaten everybody in this section multiple times, and they did not play Beaver Dam this year. So they've already proven it. They've beaten 4 times. They've beaten the Lakeshore Lightning 3 times. They've beaten Arrowhead. You can't pick against them. You cannot reasonably pick against them.
And so, it's one of those ones where I had to go look at their schedule and everything to see and see if I could make a case for somebody else to win this one, and for me to but I can't. I really have to go with the Wildcats out of this bracket.
That's not to say these other teams can't beat them. It's just that you cannot reasonably expect them to do so. Um, if we didn't have to play the games, then none of this would matter. But that's why they play the games. But you can't justify not taking USM in this section. Unless a bunch of players just got suspended for throwing a wild party, which seems to be more of a boys hockey thing than a girls hockey thing. I don't think you can't pick against them in this section.
Alrighty then. Division 1, boys.
Yeah. Speaking
Section
of how
4,
it's hard
again.
to justify picking against University School.
University School. KMMO, number 2, has put together a nice season. Arrowhead, number 3. Waukesha, number 4. Brookfield, number 5. Marquette, number 6. Whitefish Bay, Nicolay Sherwood, number 7. Janesville, 8. New Berlin, 9. Milton, 10. If MJ was here, he'd probably make his case for Janesville being the dark horse, but MJ's not here, so Dell should probably do that for him.
Yeah, well, I'll give Janesville their win over New Berlin, and then they get to draw the number 1 seed and who the currently ranked number 1 in the state. So it's a tough draw for Janesville, who's already had a bit of a rough season, starting late and trying to pile in 3 to 4 games a week, it seems. And so
There's a case to be made, however, for KMMO.
I was just looking at that.
They lost to University School the first time they played 2-1. University School outshot them 31-16. Second time they played, there's a 3-2 overtime University School win, and KMMO actually outshot USM 32-28. So they picked up their game. University School plays a harder schedule than KMMO. So KMMO, whatever they did between those games, they picked it up. They played a lot better, forced them into overtime. So even though University School is currently the number 1 team in the state, and they just, I think it was 5-1, they just spanked Hudson, the previous number 1 in the state. Don't overlook KMMO. They've had, they're not as consistent as USM is. You can see that from, they went, 3-2 overtime loss to USM to just 6 days later, a 6-2 loss to Waukesha, who isn't, this isn't Zed Dietrich, Jake Kupski Waukesha. They're 13-9.
And then just yesterday, a 6-0 loss to Notre Dame.
Right. So they're not as consistent, and I think that comes from the fact that KMMO is like we said with Edgewood. KMMO is incredibly top heavy. Jacob Cartland, Hunter Santos, Michael Saunders seem to get most of their scoring done. So if you can manage to shut down that group, Cartland has 26 goals, Santos has 21, Saunders has 13, Jackson Keller has 11. Everybody else is down in the single digits. So Cartland and Santos, if you can shut them down, you're going to have a good shot against KMMO. They don't have as much depth, which makes a little bit more inconsistency, but they've played USM great twice. So that should be, assuming they both make it there, that should be another great game in the sectional final. Marquette, the 6th seed, just lost a 5-4 or 4-3 overtime game to University School. That was played outdoors. I was watching that game, and I'm like, going into the game, I predicted, looking at the team schedules and records, and I'm like, all right, University School is going to win this game 6-0. After the first period, Marquette led 2-0. All right, I'm like, okay, University School is going to win this game 6-2. After the second period, I think it was Marquette led 4-0. I'm like, University School might not win this game. And they ended up, I think it was 3-3 at that, or 3-0 at that point. They ended up tying it up with 29 seconds left on the clock and then winning in overtime. So, showed a lot of heart there on USM's part, because they should, looking at the two teams and the way they've played this year, there's no reason University School should have been down 3-0, but they were. And other teams who are going to be facing University School should look at that game as a weakness for USM. Yes, they came back. They thundered back in the third period, tied that game up, and ended up winning it 4-3 in overtime. But
so they should plan to play University School outside?
First, step one, play at Cahill Park in Whitefish Bay. It'll take, for some reason, it's going to take University School a little longer to adjust to the ice than you are. And step two, find a way to end the game after 2 periods. Does hockey have a rain delay rule like baseball, where if 5 innings are in the books, it's an official game? If you get 2 periods in, is it over?
If it starts raining, it very well could be.
And you look at Arrowhead, who had the number 3 seed, who's the number 3 seed here, and they've had 2 tough losses to KMMO. They lost 6-4 and 5-3. But I was looking at it. Out of their last 10 games, they had a 7-game winning streak going into Thursday the 28th, and then they lost 3 straight games. On the Thursday, they lost to University School 4-0. Then Friday, they lost 4-3 to Janesville, and then yesterday 4 to Fond du Lac. And that's not the way you want to be rolling as you're getting ready to go into the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's kind of disappointing how Arrowhead had a phenomenal year last year. What were they, 23-1 going into the tournament, and then they ended up losing to USM. That the 23-1 season that nobody other than Arrowhead is ever going to remember, because it didn't even make it to the state tournament. So those players have probably got a little chip on their shoulder about that. They're a good team. I was, the loss to USM 4-0 after that 7-game win streak, that wasn't surprising. The loss to Janesville and the loss to Fond du Lac was a little surprising, given what Arrowhead had done through that point of the season. I mean, their losses were Springs, KMMO, who's a 2 seed and they've gotten votes just about every week in the top 6. Whether or not they've actually cracked the top 6 at least once. Bayport, we already mentioned Marcus Niemi. He's a fantastic goalie. Nina, KMMO, 2 more losses. University School, and then those last two to Janesville and Fond du Lac, those just don't fit the bill for what else Arrowhead had done this season. So that was a little surprising that they kind of backed into the playoffs that way.
I just looking at the score sheet against Janesville. They actually outshot Janesville 39-20, almost doubled them up on shots and stuff in there. Main reason I went to look at it is I was looking to see if Mason had gotten a goal or a penalty out of it, but he ended up with neither. So
no penalties.
Nope, no penalty for Mason. So
well, yeah, I mean, I look at I look at making a case. You can make a case for KMMO. You can make a case for Arrowhead. Waukesha, maybe a dark horse may try to make a case for them. But then I remember our conversation earlier in the year with John Welsh from Fond du Lac Springs, who just kept talking about how the regular season was just preparation for the playoffs. And you look at University School and how often they make the state tournament, and do they have the same attitude that the regular season is just preparation for the state tournament? Yeah, we may lose a game here or there, but we're trying different things. And when it comes down, once the playoffs start, okay, that's when we shift into high gear, and that's when we, start playing serious hockey, playoff hockey, as they call it. And that's, University School, despite what problems they've had in the past, they tend to make it to the tournament. And
Yeah,
I say,
when they don't, it's because they generally, it's not because they're not great. It's because they ran into some team having a career year, so to speak. Like the
yes,
Dietrich Kupski year for Waukesha.
right. And like I say, KMMO's had a good year. Arrowhead's had a good season. Waukesha can do, but none of them have the kind of powerhouse team this year um, that I think is going to knock University School off. So I'm going to have to go with USM again.
And I also am going to go with USM again.
Yeah. But speaking of Jake Kupski, he is one of only 2 goalies born in Wisconsin who is currently playing professional hockey, as far as I know.
And where is he?
He's in the ECHL with the South Carolina Stingrays. The ECHL did not fold. You thought that they folded. Several of their teams are not playing this year, kind of like the Milwaukee Admirals are not playing in the AHL, but the league still exists.
Is that the same league as the Charleston Chiefs?
I don't think so.
Okay.
He and Chris Nell of Notre Dame Academy are the only 2 that I am aware of Wisconsin goalies currently being paid to play hockey after college. So yeah.
All right.
Well, we've gotten through the sectionals. The one thing that is that any of the girls' coaches, if you're listening in, remember the Wisconsin Prep Hockey Award nominees are due by this Tuesday. So if you please get them emailed in to us, that'd be great.
Yep, and when going through the sectionals, if we didn't mention your team, we're sorry. We tried to finish this. I think we're at an hour and 20 minutes now. We tried to finish this in a reasonable amount of time. If we wanted to talk about every team's highs and lows for the year, we would have to go back as doing this as 3 shows, and we're not doing that anymore.
Well, no, they don't give us enough time between the choosing of the sectionals and unless we did like 3 straight nights. So as usual, even though he's not listed on the thing, if you have any hate mail, you can still send it to Trasher at wisconsinprephockey.net, and we'll make sure he gets it.
Yep. He may be retired, but he still owns 20% of the site, so he can get all the hate mail. That could be his job in retirement. Yes.
Oh, and tomorrow is the last day for your nominees for the Hobie Baker Character Award. So one last time, please, coaches, send in a nominee for the Hobie Baker Character Award. We've been talking about it on it here. There's information on our site. Jim Hayes has been sending information to the coaches every week. So, open his email. Please nominate somebody from your team. It's a good program. Just do it.
And coaches, if you have your all-conference teams, please send them to us. Like I have the Fox River Classic all-conference team. Nobody sent that to us. I found it randomly browsing Twitter. If you have them, please send them to us. We're not clairvoyant, so we can post it. People like to see them, and we're usually where people go to find stuff, so help us out.
And I guess at this point, it says some teams are going to be done after this next week. Just want to, we actually missed being in the rinks to be able to see you guys this year. Hopefully next year turns out a little bit better and we're allowed back into the rinks and everybody's health is a little bit better for next year. Good luck going into the playoffs.
Oh, that reminds me one other thing. I don't know if it's a coincidence or if somebody planned it or whatever, but had we been doing our normal thing of going to games and being able to go to rinks and stuff, and the sectional finals this year, whoever came up, like on the girls' side, 3 out of the 4 sectional finals are actually double headers with boys' sectional finals, which would have been great for us to cover. I mean, we go one place, we get 2 games. However that turned out, I mean, if you could do it again next year when we can actually go to games, that'd be swell.
Yeah, because
every year we try to divide up, the 12 sectional finals, and us, who can go to this one and that one, and to have 2 of them at the same place in the same day, that's awesome. Unfortunately, we won't be at them this year, but if they're streamed somewhere, we'll watch them. But
I think a place like UW River Falls should host all 3 sectionals that are in its geographical area: boys, girls, D1, D2, and girls. That's my dream. It's like Championship Saturday, just 4 of them throughout the state.
right, make that happen next year, guys, gals, everybody. Anything else, Del? No? All right.
Nothing for me.
I guess that's it then. Thanks again for listening. You've been listening to This Week in Wisconsin Prep Hockey. Good night.